Back in session, parties and council are present, our jurors are not yet present. Council indicated there was something you wanted to address before we began again.
Yes, Your Honor. There was a pretrial ruling excluding exhibit number 10. However, since then, Ms. Rodriguez elicited testimony from the coroner involving an exhibit which is 385, which is a clump of clothing, the white cord, and the red strap that were removed from Joseph McStay. The people would ask the court to reconsider its ruling as to exhibit number 10, which is a picture which was at least initially litigated as a picture in life, barefoot, of Joseph sitting at his computer desk. The other significance was overlooked, which is the clothing he is wearing in that picture, at least the shorts, are consistent with the items taken from the grave. And so in the presentation with Sergeant Steers, the people would ask permission to use exhibit 10 as comparative to the item of evidence taken from the grave that Dr. C testified to yesterday in 385. And I can show you a picture of it,
Okay,
one way or the other, if it enlightens you at all or is willing to change your mind.
it might help.
Okay.
What's the relevance? We've stipulated ID. I don't know the relevance. What are they trying to prove? ID?
No.
Then what are they trying to prove by it, Your Honor? What's the relevance?
So this is,
I should.
well, is someone going to compare the shorts to the clothing in the grave and say that they appear to be the same?
Yes.
Who?
Detective Steers. Or now Sergeant Steers, Trevor. And that would be the relevance.
What is the relevance of the shorts in the grave or the shorts in that picture? I don't understand the relevance. If they're going to say it's to prove ID, both parties already stipulated.
I think the argument is to show that he was taken from the home, is that right?
That is one inference from that evidence, yes.
Okay, and what else?
That is the main inference, yes.
Okay,
That those are the shorts on the body of Joseph McStay. That he's in a picture wearing those same shorts.
The defense and the media have repeatedly attempted to portray what the prosecution's theory of the case was. The fact that clothing that is known to be worn by Mr. McStay is then found in a grave indicates that something happened at that house. Period.
No, they're not.
The extent to which is up to debate, despite what others have said our theory is.
well, regardless of where Mr. McStay was taken from or killed, he was probably wearing some of his own clothing. So I really don't think that identifying clothing in the grave as his clothing, the clothing that he had worn on some occasion, tends to show anything. If there was evidence that that photograph of him wearing that clothing was on February the 4th, that might have some additional relevance. But beyond that, if he's found buried with clothing, either on him or in the grave, it's gonna be his clothing. That doesn't necessarily indicate that he was taken from the house. So I really don't see, I still don't see any added relevance to Exhibit 10.
Okay, I wanted to check with the court before I stumbled into it.
Okay.
There was an argument not made at the time. So,
Okay. Okay, we ready to, we have all our jurors here?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we can go ahead and bring our jurors in. We are back in session. Parties and counsel are present. All members of our jury and our alternates are present. People ready to call the next witness?
Yes, Your Honor, the people call Elva Fonseca.
Do you solemnly state the evidence in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
See. Can you state your full name, spell it for the record?
Elva Fonseca, ELVA FONSECA.
Okay, we proceed.
Thank you. Good morning, Ms. Fonseca.
Good morning.
Do you know Charles Merritt?
Yes, I do.
Do you see Mr. Merritt here in the courtroom today?
Yes, I do.
Could you please point out where he's seated and identify an article of clothing that he's wearing?
The man on the left there with the blue shirt.
May the record reflect that the witness has identified the defendant.
Reference to the flag.
How do you know Mr. Merritt?
I worked for Mr. Merritt in 2007.
Do you recall when you first began working for the defendant?
In March 2007.
Now, you've been interviewed about this case several times, is that correct?
About 3 times?
Do you recall being interviewed at one point by the San Diego Sheriff's Department back in 2011?
Yes.
And when you talked to them, had you looked up the time frame that you had worked for the defendant and verified the time frame that it was?
I don't remember verifying exactly.
And
But I have a ballpark idea because I remember when I first started my next job after I left Mr. Merritt.
before you came in to testify today, did you do anything to verify the time frame that you worked for the defendant?
Yes, I did.
What did you do?
I called the temp agency I was hired through.
So when you first started to work for the defendant in March of 2007, you indicated that you verified your employment with a temp agency, is that correct?
Yes.
So how was it that you came to be employed for the defendant through the temp agency?
He found me through Apple One, and then he bought me out.
Okay, so you first started working for him in March of 2007, but were you actually working for the temp agency at that time?
Yes.
So explain to us a little bit how that works in terms of how you ended up, or if you know, did the defendant call and ask for an employee to do certain things and you were available, so you responded? Or did you interview together or something along those lines?
Yes, I
The
did.
the objection sustained is in the form of a question. That's calling for hearsay and speculation.
Did you have to interview with the defendant in March of 2007 before you actually went to work for him?
Yes.
And was that set up by the temporary agency?
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about what the conversation was in terms of what your duties were going to be when you interviewed with him in March of 2007.
He was looking for a personal assistant to manage his calendar and files, answer the phone.
His,
And after
I'm
that,
sorry, wait, sorry, to manage his calendar and, I didn't hear you.
Files and answer the phone.
Thank you.
After that interview, you then went to work for the defendant, is that right?
Yes.
And what kind of hours were you working?
Regular 8 to 5?
Was that Monday through Friday?
Yes.
And what location were you working out of?
I believe it was at Mission Street
In what city?
in Pomona. Don't remember the exact name of the street.
Was that an office? that he had?
It was a space that he was renting from a large company.
Describe for us sort of what that space was. Was it just office or construction, or what exactly that space was?
The company was, they did large displays, I believe.
Let me stop for just a second. What type of business was it that that the defendant was involved in when you went to work for him?
Waterfall manufacturing.
And did he have a specific name for his company?
It was, I designed for you.
Is that all one word?
Yes.
So you went to work for him, and when you went to this location in Pomona, were the waterfalls actually constructed at that location?
Yes.
During the time that you were working for the defendant, did you ever have an opportunity to come into contact with Joseph McStay?
Yes.
And how did you come into contact with Mr. McStay?
He visited one time. That's where I met him.
And did anybody ever explain to you what the nature of Mr. McStay's relationship with the defendant was?
And he sold the water.
And you can answer yes or no as to whether or not it would explain anything to you.
Not specifically.
Did the defendant ever talk to you about being in any type of business with Mr. McStay?
I'm not understanding.
Sure. Do you know if the defendant and Mr. McStay actually worked together?
Yes.
How do you know that?
Because he would pay for the water features.
When you say he would pay for the water features, who are you referring to?
Joseph. He would pay to have them manufactured.
Was there any type of accounting system that was used or bookkeeping system that was used by the defendant for his business?
Yes.
What type of system was that they used?
QuickBooks.
During the nature or the time that you were employed by the defendant, did your job duties change at all?
Yes.
How did they change?
There were many gaps in the running of the business, and so I would fill in where I saw necessary in order to support I Designed For You. It initially started where I didn't do bookkeeping, I didn't do any timekeeping, but it evolved into me being a part of the hiring process and doing bookkeeping and checking quality control and many other items.
Was that the things that you just described to us, the bookkeeping and quality control and hiring and things like that, did you have any experience in that area before going to work for the defendant?
Objection relevant.
Yes.
In terms of the bookkeeping, did you have access to bank accounts?
Not directly, but I would reconcile to the
Okay.
QuickBooks.
Okay, and so you would use bank records to reconcile, is that right?
The bank statements, yes.
Whose name were the bank statements in?
Catherine Jarvis.
Now, you indicated that you had met Joseph McStay. Do you know if Mr. McStay had a different company at that time?
Yes.
What was the name of Mr. McStay's company?
Earth Inspired Products.
And would you have an opportunity to view orders that would come in for the defendant from Earth Inspired Products?
Yeah, I'd see the total of the project.
How would you see that?
I don't recall if they were faxed or how we would get the order in, but then I would assist in ordering the product, the steel.
Now, when an order would come in, and you would assist in ordering the steel, was any payment transferred to the defendant when an order would be received from Earth Inspired Products?
Objection foundation.
you repeat the question?
Sure. You indicated that an order would come in, and you don't recall exactly how it would come in. Do you recall that? And you indicated or testified that you would see a total, right? You have to answer out loud.
Yes, sorry.
And so when you would see that total, because you were doing some of the bookkeeping work, did you have an opportunity to notice if the defendant would receive any payment from Earth Inspired Products for the job that had come in?
Yes, from my recollection, he would receive payment for a portion of the waterfall up front and the balance at completion of the waterfall.
And do you know what that exact split was?
I don't remember.
Do you recall the amounts of the invoices that you would observe coming in for the defendant from Mr. McStay?
Objection made.
What was the question?
Sure. When you would see the orders that would come in, do you recall if they were small projects or big projects or anything like that?
I did large, beautiful waterfalls.
Do you recall what the dollar amounts were of those particular projects?
They range between 2,000, 8,000, large.
So they were all different.
Yes.
Now, during the time that the defendant would be working on these projects, did you ever have an opportunity to observe the waterfalls?
Yes.
And to your knowledge, did the defendant also have side projects that he would do outside of Earth Inspired Products?
Objection, no foundation.
Yes.
Okay, and would there ever be occasion where you noticed something happening with pumps?
Yes.
Do you know who would purchase the pumps for the waterfalls for Earth Inspired Products?
Yes.
Who would purchase those pumps?
Joey.
And that would be Joseph McStay?
Joseph McStay.
And you indicated that you had an opportunity to learn that something was going on with those pumps. Can you tell us what that was?
Yes. We had set up a little room on the side where we had all the inventory, and there was a water feature that Chase had constructed for his side of the business, and he was using a pump that belonged to Joseph.
How did you know that that was a pump that belonged to Joseph?
We had those separate from our pumps.
And did you ever have an opportunity to hear a phone conversation between the defendant and Mr. McStay regarding that pump?
I'm sorry, did I witness Joseph and Chase have a conversation regarding it?
Did you ever have an opportunity to hear that conversation?
No.
Do you ever remember the defendant telling Mr. McStay that he needed an additional pump?
He would say, we need more pumps, I'm out of pumps.
And to your knowledge, was the defendant using pumps that he had received from Mr. McStay for his own personal projects?
Objection, no foundation. Speculation.
Yes.
And did you ever have an opportunity to tell Joseph McStay that the defendant was doing that?
Yes.
How long did you actually work for the defendant?
From March 2007 to December 2007. 8 months.
Now, would you also have contact during that time with Joseph McStay on the phone?
On occasions.
Did you ever have a conversation with Mr. McStay regarding payroll for the business?
Yes.
What was that about?
There was an occasion where we were behind on rent and there was no funds to do payroll, and Charles had called Joseph telling him that a water feature was complete in order to get payment and funds into the account. and I notified, or we spoke about that water feature, the status of it being completed when I spoke to Joseph and informed him that, that it wasn't complete. However, we were low on funds and he was probably trying to make payroll.
Did Joseph McStay end up sending the money for payroll?
Yes.
Was there a particular company that payroll was done through at the time?
For a portion of my employment, it was through ADP.
Did other people work for the defendant at that time as well?
Yes.
Who else worked for the defendant at that time?
Benito,
Checking relevance.
Sustained.
Did other people work on the waterfalls at that same time that you worked for the defendant?
yes.
And during the time that you testified about where you talked to Joseph McStay and let him know what was going on in terms of the defendant using pumps for his own projects or letting him know that there wasn't money to cover payroll, do you know how soon it was after those conversations that you had with Joseph McStay that you actually stopped working for the defendant?
Maybe 3 months.
Nothing further.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
So you worked for Chase for about 8 months, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
You had never worked on waterfalls or water features before, had you? I worked for a company that did that kind of stuff.
Not manufacturing of waterfalls, but I work for a company that manufactured cabinets.
Okay. But not waterfalls, right?
No, sir.
Cabinets don't have pumps and cabinets don't have water features,
No,
correct?
sir.
Okay. So that was a new experience for you, correct? Working for a company that built the waterfalls, right?
Yes,
And you were only there 8 months, correct?
correct.
And if I understand your testimony correctly, you said that there were pumps that you kept separately and for I guess, business that had to do with Joseph, and then other pumps for other customers. Is that accurate?
Yes,
Okay. And did you testify that Joseph had a conversation with Mr. Merritt about those pumps? You didn't hear a conversation, but did they talk? Do you know if they talked about those pumps?
I don't recall them having a conversation about the pumps. I remember them having conversation about the completion of waterfalls.
And this 2007 period, you're aware that iDesign and Earth-inspired products just started doing business in the summer of 2007. You're aware of that, right? You were there.
Objection, speculation.
Sustained also, since that's not new.
In fact, when Joseph came to your building there in Pomona, that's the first time he had seen Chase's waterfalls, right? Remember
Objection,
that?
speculation.
Sustained.
Do you remember if that was the first time he had come?
I don't know what the relationship was prior to me starting with iDesign for You.
How many projects did Joseph and Chase do together while you were there?
Many,
What would you say? More than 3?
definitely more than 3.
More than 10?
Yes,
20?
many,
Was it more than 20, do you think?
yes.
And these were all waterfalls that were built by Chase himself, correct?
And the employees, yes.
And how many other employees would help?
At some point, there were three, rotate 3 or 4.
But they did all the building?
Yes,
And if I understand, your other testimony is that there was an occasion where payroll was not going to be made, is that correct?
right,
Okay. And so Chase told Joseph that there was a waterfall that was completed. Is that right?
Yes.
And do you know which waterfall that was?
No.
Do you know how much it was worth? Because you said they're different values, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
so, but you said you called Joseph and told him about that, right?
They had a conversation
Well,
regarding,
my question is, did you call Joseph and tell him that?
tell him what?
That the waterfall wasn't completed?
Yes.
Okay, but you must have told him which waterfall it was.
Yes.
Which one was it?
Objection argument, asked and answered.
Sustained.
So you don't know which waterfall it was,
Objection, asked and answered.
Sustained.
and you don't know the value.
Objection, asked and answered.
Sustained.
But Chase was trying to get the money from Joseph to cover payroll, including yours, right?
Objection, speculation, misstates the evidence.
Overruled. Answer.
Correct?
Yes.
And you got paid, right? You got
Yes.
payroll?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Anything else?
No, Your Honor.
Any objection to Ms. Fonseca being excused?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you for your attendance and your excuse. Okay? And you call your next witness?
Can you call Sergeant Joseph Steers, please?
Do you solemnly state the evidence given in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. See. State your full name, spell it for the record.
Joseph Steers, Joseph, S, T as in Tom, EERS.
What is your occupation, sir?
I'm a sergeant for the San Maria County Sheriff's Department,
How long have you been employed as a sworn peace officer?
approximately 20 years.
Back in late 2013, early 2014, what was your assignment?
I was a detective for the San Maria County Sheriff's Department, assigned to the Specialized Investigations Division, Homicide Detail.
And at some point, were you tasked to participate in the investigation of the disappearance and recovery of the remains of the McStay family?
Yes.
And can you tell us what your role in that investigation was back then?
I reviewed the initial investigation conducted by the San Diego Sheriff's Department and the items that were found at the grave site, and then began conducting interviews, conducting further investigation to the homicide.
You mentioned reviewing evidence that San Diego had, correct?
Correct.
Okay, what did that review entail?
Photographs that were supplied through search warrants for, at the time of reviewing the initial residence in Fallbrook.
And were you familiar with the recovery of the remains as well?
Yes.
Did you make yourself familiar with the evidence that was recovered during the excavation of the remains in north of Victorville?
Yes.
Was that part of your evaluation of the case when your team began the investigation, the subsequent investigation?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to start with a few photographs that we've seen before, so I'm going to kind of show them to you collectively. Exhibit number 53, 55, 100, and 660. Do you recognize those photographs and what they contain?
Yes.
And how are you familiar with them?
I recognize the photographs provided by the San Diego Sheriff's Department when they served search warrant at the state residence in San Diego.
Starting in the top right corner, Exhibit 55 as displayed. I've displayed all four of them together. Exhibit number 55 in the top right corner. What stood out to you as an initial investigator evaluating the state of the investigation when you saw that photograph?
That there were no towels inside the bathroom.
Okay. And is this the downstairs bathroom?
That's correct.
Exhibit number 100. Is that the upstairs bathroom?
Yes, the upstairs shared bathroom.
And what was significant about that photograph when you reviewed it?
Again, no towels.
Exhibit 660 in the top left. That is what?
That's the master bathroom, and there's one hook with no robe, and then a second hook with a bathrobe on it.
In the bottom left, exhibit number 53, what is that?
That's the downstairs bathroom toilet where there's a decorative rug chamois on the toilet seat and no matching floor rugs or any other type of matching set to it.
Did that cause you to look at the evidence that was recovered from the grave sites?
Yes.
Showing you exhibit number 297 as displayed. What was significant about that?
Looking at the fabric and the way it's depicted in the photograph, it appeared consistent with what would be either the bathrobe, if there's one missing from the hook, or from matching rug to the toilet seat cover.
Object as to foundation, once you can establish expertise in fabric and also speculation.
How about a lay opinion as based on his observation?
Overruled.
Lay opinion is irrelevant.
The objection's overruled.
And exhibit number 293, what was significant about that?
293 appeared to be a towel with a sunflower type print, consistent with a bath towel or beach towel, which I did not notice in any of the other photographs of the residents at the time of search warrant.
Now, the fabric material, fuzzy fabric material in 297 and then the towel in 293, those were not the exclusive pieces of evidence taken from the grave that piqued your curiosity, was it?
No, they weren't.
There were other pieces of material found, to your knowledge?
Yes.
Showing you exhibit number 36, 121, and 93. Are you familiar with those photographs?
Yes.
And how are you familiar with them?
There are photographs, again, from the San Diego Sheriff's Department when they served the search warrant in the McStay residence.
Displaying them all together, 36 in the bottom right corner is what?
It's a lounge, kind of a chase lounge or a couch in the living room or family room in the McStay residence.
We've already described by other witnesses as a futon. Would that be consistent?
Correct.
Okay. Exhibit 121 in the top right corner, do you recognize that?
Yes.
Okay. And what is that?
They look like pillows without pillow covers, consistent again with the futon.
Okay. And exhibit number 93.
The same, a pillow consistent with the futon that doesn't have its cover. And then there's a beige cloth material underneath it.
Okay. And what was significant about that when you viewed those for purposes of your investigation?
It appeared that in all three photographs, the covers for the futon pillows and the futon itself were missing, with the exception that the beige colored fabric underneath the pillow in exhibit number 93 is consistent with the same covers that were pictured in other photographs from the McStay house. It was the same color as the futons when they actually had the cover on them.
Was the number of uncovered pillows, and in this case the futon mattress, significant to you in that analysis?
Yes.
Why?
Because there's what appears to be only one leftover cover here on the dryer in exhibit number 93, and we're, from looking at the totality of all three photographs, we're missing a lot more than one cover.
Did you attempt to examine the evidence that was recovered from the grave excavation to see if you could answer any of those questions?
Yes, my partner did, and I looked at the photographs.
Okay. And showing you exhibit number 262, do you recognize that?
Yes.
And what is that?
It's a picture of a beige woven cloth material consistent with what was pictured in the previous exhibit number 93 and the photographs that were seen of the futon that it had its cover on.
Objection, foundation.
Overruled.
Exhibit number 262, is that the sole and exclusive picture of fabric material taken from the excavation site?
No.
Was there numerous?
Yes.
Okay, so at this point it's an exemplar, just a single reference point?
Yes.
And given the degraded state of the materials that were recovered from the grave, were you able to conclusively make any particular matches to any particular items?
No.
Showing you exhibits 110 and 691, do you recognize what's depicted in those two photographs?
Yes.
And what is that?
In 110, it's the bathroom commode from the master bedroom. And in 691, it's a picture of the McStay garage. Both photographs are from the San Diego Sheriff's Department at the time of the search warrant.
And you had an opportunity to review those, I take it?
Yes.
And what was significant for your purposes when you reviewed those?
In 110, there's only one towel, and it's a smaller looking towel. So typically, there would be more towels of the same type.
Objection, speculation.
And in 691, there was rolled up shop towels on the right side of the photograph when looking at it, and some additional white shop towels behind it.
There is a laser pointer here. At least there was. There it is. You can point out the shop towels you're referring to in 691. So then showing you exhibit number 279, do you recognize what's depicted in that photograph?
Yes.
279. And how do you recognize that?
It's a picture of a towel from the gravesite, the gravesite.
And how was that significant to you in evaluating this case when you first took over?
In evaluating this shop towel, it was consistent with the shop towels that were seen in exhibit number 691.
Objection as to foundation and speculation comparing those two exhibits.
And again, 279 was not was it the sole somewhat intact towel that was recovered at the scene to your knowledge?
No.
And in this case, it's used as an exemplar in comparing the evidence you saw from the Fallbrook investigation to what started up in the Victor Valley.
Correct.
Showing you what's been marked as exhibit number 48 and 83. Do you recognize those two photographs?
Yes, I do.
How are you familiar with those?
These are photographs I reviewed again from the San Diego Sheriff's Department when they served the search warrant at the McStay residence in Fallbrook.
And why did you single out exhibits 48 and 83 in your evaluation of the case at that time?
There was presence of paint cans in 48 on the bottom right corner, along with some painting supplies above it. And in 83, in the garage, there's a couple paint cans depicted on the right side.
And what is that on top of the box to the left in 83?
Additional paint supplies.
Okay. And to your knowledge, was there also another paint can documented in the house somewhere?
Yes, I believe the laundry room.
Okay. Based on that, looking at exhibits number 250 and 348, I believe, if I read that right and correct, do you recognize those two items?
Yes, I do.
And how are you familiar with them?
There were photographs of Summer McStay's brazier found in the gravesite and the Stanley sledgehammer found in the gravesite.
And how was that significant to you in evaluating this case in the beginning?
Both items had what appeared to be the paint smudge on them. The bra had what appeared to be paint going horizontally across it, and then there was a paint smudge on the handle of the Stanley sledgehammer. And those are consistent with the painting at the residence in Fallbrook.
Objection, foundation.
Are you aware whether the hammer and the bra, what appeared to be paint, was sampled and sent off for further testing?
Yes.
Showing you exhibit number 52 and 364. Starting with 52, are you familiar with that?
Yes.
How are you familiar with that?
It's a photograph I reviewed from the San Diego Sheriff's Department that's going to serve a search warrant at the Fallbrook residence depicting blue painterscape around the door frame and walls to the downstairs bathroom.
And exhibit 364? I don't have it displayed yet.
364 is a clump of material that was found on the gravesite where the McStays were found in Victorville, which also had what appeared to be the same type of blue painter's tape wrapped in it.
Objection is foundation, hearsay, and speculation.
Overruled.
That there appeared to be blue painter's tape?
Yes.
Your Honor, objection, foundation, and speculation.
Overruled.
Showing you exhibit number 267 and 268. Do you recognize that?
Yes. Yes, I do.
How are you familiar with them?
One is, number 267 is a backpack found in the gravesite of the in Victorville, and 268 were 3 items: a paintbrush, a spoon, and a small little paint type item that was also found in the gravesite.
Were you also familiar with the fact?
Objection is foundation unless he was there when they recovered.
Overrule this to exhibit 267. I'm not sure we've had evidence on the items in 268.
I'll ask court to take judicial notice of Ms. Radliff's testimony of 268 regarding the recovery of those items from the backpack when she processed it.
Commit.
All right, the objection's overruled.
At some point, were you made aware of photographs of the family that was recovered from either cameras or computers taken at their homes by San Diego Sheriff's Department?
Yes.
Showing you what's marked as exhibit number 7 for identification. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
And what is that?
It's a picture of Joseph McStay Jr. holding a paintbrush similar to the one photographed in exhibit number 268.
Joseph or Gianni?
I believe it's Joseph.
And the paintbrush you're talking to is being held in his hands?
Yes.
Was there a further significance to the backpack and the spoon and the pick type object that became apparent to you during the investigation?
Yes.
And what was that?
The children, from a conversation I had with Miss Susan Blake,
Then, Your Honor, object is hearsay where he testified.
Sustained.
Not offered for the truth of the matter.
Objection sustained.
At some point,
Your Honor, we withdraw the objection.
I'm sorry?
We'll withdraw. We'll withdraw our objection.
Okay.
go ahead and answer.
In talking to Ms. Blake, she advised me that the kids like to consider themselves archaeologists digging for dinosaur bones. And so in the backpack, they would always have these items so they could play like they were digging for dinosaur bones.
Was that significant to you when you reviewed evidence from San Diego?
Yes.
I'm showing you exhibit number 107. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
And what is that?
It's a photograph taken of the McStay residence in Fallbrook at the time they served a search warrant. And in the center of the photograph are what appears to be plastic dinosaur bones or toys.
Showing you what's been marked as exhibit number 283, 284, and 286. Are you familiar with what's contained in those photographs?
Yes.
And how are you familiar with them?
There are photographs of items found in the gravesite in the grave room.
What is 283 in the top left?
A clump of material, including a black piece of material on the top.
284?
It's a black piece of material from that clump of material that looks like an eye or a circle.
286?
It's the, again, portion of that material which with what appears to be a nose and whiskers.
I'm showing you what's been marked as exhibit number 4. Were you familiar with, again, pictures of the McStay children recovered from their laptops or cameras?
Yes.
And are you familiar with that photograph?
Yes.
And what is the significance of it here?
The photograph depicts a beige child's bathrobe with what appears to be Joseph McStay Jr. wrapped in it. And at the top of the head, there's a black circle consistent with the eye found at the gravesite, and then the nose and whiskers consistent with the material found at the gravesite.
Was that the end-all, be-all of your investigation?
No.
In 2014, did you have an opportunity to return to the Avocado Vista Lane house?
Yes.
For what purpose?
We served a search warrant at the residence.
Why? It's been 4 years.
We wanted to see if there was any additional evidence at the scene.
When you had reviewed all the photographs taken by San Diego during their search warrant, correct?
Yes.
So when you went to the house now in, was that August of 2014?
Yes.
Okay. So when you go now in August of 2014, was the house the same?
No.
Can you describe the differences and changes?
Yes. The house had been purchased by another family. In purchasing the home, they repainted the front door, both on the outside and the inside. They replaced the flooring in the first story with hardwood floors and new baseboards. They had painted the downstairs bathroom and had removed all the carpet from downstairs, with the exception of the downstairs bedroom and the stairs and the upstairs. And that's the majority of the changes. They did some landscaping changes on the outside.
Could you readily tell whether any other rooms had been painted or not?
They told me they did not.
Okay. And so what would be the use of going back now 4 years later in an attempt to recover evidence with that many changes that have occurred?
We wanted to determine if there was any other evidence that was still there, any latent evidence, and do a thorough investigation.
And as part of that, did you take some paint samples of some areas that could possibly render some evidence?
Shortly after the service of search warrant, I did, yes.
And where was that?
I took a sample in the family room, and I took a sample in the entryway to the kitchen.
Not at the island, though, did you?
That was shortly after, approximately a month after the first original samples.
Okay. And you sent those off, or submitted those as evidence to potentially later be tested for whatever purpose?
Correct.
Okay. No further questions?
Can we go to morning recess now? Should I get some exhibits?
Sure. We'll go ahead and take our morning recess this time, 15 minutes. Keep in mind the admonitions previously given to you, not to form or express any opinions about the case, not to discuss the case, allow anyone to discuss the case with you in your presence, and we'll see everyone back in about 15 minutes.